tayo.
Hello, ma'am.
Greetings, everyone. So happy to see you here.
Everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good evening.
Good
Good morning,
afternoon.
ma'am.
Good morning, everyone.
Buenos
Good
días,
evening,
buenas
ma'am.
tardes, buenas noches.
Evening.
Good afternoon,
Good
ma'am.
evening, miss.
Good
It's
evening.
good evening,
Good
good
evening,
afternoon,
ma'am.
and good
Good
evening for
evening,
everyone. Hi, Miss Jennifer.
Hi there. Wonderful to see you all.
Jennifer.
Buenos dias. Buenas
I am
noches.
Samantha.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Good morning, Miss Jennifer.
Hi there. Thank you for being here.
Buenos días.
Días.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today.
días.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Miss Jennifer. Good evening, Miss Jennifer. Good evening, Miss Jennifer. Good evening, Miss Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment.
Good morning, Miss Jennifer. Good evening, Miss Jennifer. Good morning, Miss Jennifer.
What an
Good
example are
evening,
these
Miss
kids doing to
Jennifer.
us. Listen to their seniors.
Good evening,
Listen to those
Miss
kids
Jennifer.
introducing and greeting their teachers. What a lesson they are doing to us. Thank you. Buenos días. Welcome. Excellent.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our conversation today with the United Nations all about student activism. And we were so happy to hear all of your voices at the beginning of our session today. I'm going through all of the pages. If you see on your Zoom call, you can switch pages and you can see we have about 15 pages of students joining in right now. So it's wonderful to see you. Please feel free to turn your video on. We love seeing into your classrooms and into your homes, and we're really excited to have you here today. My name is Jennifer Williams, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to our Goals Project conversation today, all around youth and everything you can do in your local communities and around the world for the UN Sustainable Development Goals and in your role as an environmental steward. So I'm excited to announce my co-host, Ayush Chopra, who I know a lot of you have been hearing from in our Weeks with the Goals Project. So we're now at week 4. So for our special guests, we have been learning about the SDGs over the past month. Every classroom here has been gifted one sustainable development goal. So they, along with their classmates, are learning about that goal, thinking about ways that they can take action. They're inventing, they're creating theater productions, they are doing art projects, science projects, experiments, and they'll be sharing those out with the world in 2 weeks when we have our Day of Solutions. So Ayush, I'd love for you to join in and introduce yourself here. And I know you have some special messages for our students who are joining with us.
I am Samantha.
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction. Just my name is Ayush Chopra, 18 years old and the youth ambassador for the Goals Project. I'm so delighted to be here and talk to you all again and give a warm welcome to our special guest and speakers for today. Um, and everyone who has joined so far, looking forward to an awesome seminar, 1 hour of just learning about United Nations and environment and climate changes. And one special message that I would really like to give to the youth of the world is to never stop learning and never stop sharing your ideas, because youth has the power to change the world, according to me. And people listen to youth especially. So I think so you should always keep on sharing your ideas and keep on sharing your thoughts that you have in order to make this world a better place.
Thank you, Ayush. And you've been hearing from Ayush every week, and he's sharing inspiration. He and I came together when we first found the SDGs in late 2015. He was much younger then, and he has been committed to these goals. You'll have to check out his website. He's also created a nonprofit organization, SDGs for Youth. And so people just like you, or you can get involved with Ayush and his team to take action for the world. And Ayush, we have students who have a lot of ideas. As you mentioned, we want to have them share out their ideas and keep sharing. Any messages or words of advice you have for them for chat etiquette as they're sharing in the chat box today?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the best things about any virtual seminar is the use of the chat box to connect and talk to each other directly. So we don't want to block anyone's ideas and don't let them talk to each other, but we do have some chat etiquette that I wanted to go over with everyone. So the first point being, please use professional language when you are typing in the chat box. Second, please keep on sharing your questions and thoughts about the meeting. Please keep on sharing your ideas that will contribute to the conversations. And always remember to keep on inspiring your peers.
Thank you, Ayush, for that message. And with that, I'd love to welcome in our two special guests that will be sharing with us today. So we're going to be together in this call for about 1 hour. And for the first half, we're going to hear from our two special guests on their advice for you all in the world on ways youth can take action for our planet and for the people. At the end, we have had students from all around the planet submitting questions for our special guests. So we'll be sharing out those questions, but please keep them coming in the chat box too. And we'll try to take as many of those as we can as well. If you have to go and you're not able to stay for the full hour, no worries. We'll catch you up on the recording that we'll share out later. I know a lot of people this time of day might not be the best, so we want to make sure everyone has access to all of these great ideas. So I'd love to share a few words about our two guests here today. Hawa Diallo is the Chief of Civil Society Unit at the Department of Global Communications at the United Nations. She has extensive United Nations headquarters and field experience designing advocacy and outreach initiatives that foster partnerships on global issues with an emphasis, you'll love this, on youth and women's organizations. Hawa has served in 2 United Nations peacekeeping operations in Cambodia. Anyone here from Cambodia? And in Somalia. And she's also worked for the United Nations Human Settlements Program, known as UN Habitat, in Nairobi, Kenya. I know we have a lot of friends joining from Nairobi. As an Associate Human Settlements Officer in the Partners and Youth section, where she created programs to empower young people just like you and women living in urban and rural areas. Also excited to introduce Juan Pablo. He is a youth policy and climate advocate. So Juan, when you start sharing, just to let you know, all of our students joining today, this week we're talking about their role as an environmental steward. So it doesn't matter which global goal they've been working on, they're making connections to the climate. He is currently the spokesperson of Education USA, a program of the United States Department of State. Juan is a founding member of the Youth Representatives Steering Committee, and he is a former communications associate for the United Nations Association of New York. Juan served as the co-chair of the Youth Subcommittee for the 66th United Nations DPI NGO Conference on Education for Global Citizenship in South Korea. He is also a former advisor of the Permanent Mission of Costa Rica to the United Nations at the Third Committee of the General Assembly on Youth-Related Matters. So you can see our two special guests, Hawa and Juan, both are committed to helping and supporting our youth around the world. I also checked out their social media handles, and Juan, I noticed last night that you had a picture most recently with our President of the United States. So really cool there too, and I can't wait to hear.
Excuse me, Mr. Jennifer.
One just note to all of our students, we are so excited to hear from you. Please just make sure that you mute and then share your ideas in the chat box, and we'll try to get to those.
I will
Yeah.
just keep on.
I will turn it
just keep-
over to Hawa and to Juan, our special guests, and we're so grateful for you both being with us today.
Una kusha Fambulden, una kusha. I'm so glad you went a day out today. I'm so glad you had to see all man. They come out Thailand, then they come out Japan, then they come out Turkey, then they na America, then they na Canada. I'm so glad you were on the land by the United Nations because this is not a place where me self like. Are you guys with me?
Yeah. Yes.
Did anybody understand? Did anybody understand what?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes, we are. Yes.
Of course.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I guess I muted. Did you guys hear anything I said? I mean, they say kusha, una kusha o agladi wa de na ya today because I dey see all kind picking them. They connect from Thailand, from Cambodia, from Turkey, from Japan, from America, from Canada, from India. I'm so glad you won at the land of the SDGs because me where I did at the United Nations, this now one of the things that I like. So, una they hearing me? Are you guys with me? Did you understand anything I said? Give me a reaction.
Thumbs up. There's a
Thumbs
lot of
up. Give me a thumbs up. Okay, guys. So I'm Hawa Diallo. I was speaking Pidgin English from Sierra Leone. I don't know. Anybody there from Salone, Nigeria, Ghana? I was speaking the Pidgin English, which is the way that we communicate in the country that I was born in, Sierra Leone. But I wanted to give you guys an example of what you might hear and see at the UN. Because United Nations, you've been studying about the SDGs, is a global place. It's a melting pot. So when you come to the United Nations, you may not see everyone looking like you. Everybody looks different. Everybody's from a different country. Everybody speaks different languages. Although I'm sure you guys know there's 6 official languages at the UN. I don't know if I say any. Give me a thumbs up if you think that's an official language of the UN. I just spoke to you guys Pidgin English. Is Pidgin English an official of the UN? What about Chinese? What about Arabic? English, French, Russian, Spanish. So Pidgin may not be an official language of the UN, but the other 6 I mentioned are. So I want you guys to get this feeling that we are in a global environment. I mean, I am so fortunate every day, and everybody who's at the UN, because I go to work, even online, and I feel as if I'm visiting a different place in the world. So it's just really to situate us and to understand that, you know, although we come from different places and different backgrounds, all of us are committed. And if it's to use the word that we're talking about today, all of us have that passion, that activism that brings us to the United Nations. And for me, that's how I feel every day as a staff member. So I mentioned that I'm from Sierra Leone. That's where I was born, but I grew up in New York City. And that's because my dad worked in government in Sierra Leone, and he was posted as an ambassador to the United Nations. So I came to the US when I was like in the 2nd grade. I don't know if anybody's in the 2nd grade here. So if you are, you must imagine how I felt leaving my country and coming to a new place. But it was always a great experience because in my dad's work, I was really exposed to so many different cultures. I mean, in our home, there were so many gatherings, get-togethers of people of different cultures and languages, because one of the role of the ambassadors really is networking and meeting with the other representative, the other ambassadors to talk business. And sometimes that is definitely at the United Nations, but sometimes it's also through social gatherings. So that's something that, you know, I always tell people the United Nations was always in my life, and I didn't even really know what it was. Because in the 2nd grade, I mean, I'm not sure if I knew what my parents did. But over the years, I really got to understand and to love and to appreciate the work that my, that my dad did. And I think one thing that really gave me was a sense of community, a sense of giving back, I think without even knowing, because I never really planned to work at the UN, I just ended up there. But I think in one way or another, I think the forces led me towards the United Nations without even knowing it. So as Jennifer said, I've had a world of experience at the UN. I started when I was 21, 2 weeks out of college. And I had the opportunity to work as a tour guide at the United Nations. And I have to tell you guys, that's the best experience. I've had a lot of great experiences at the UN, but working as a tour guide really made me who I am at the UN. I was working with 60 other 21-year-olds. We were learning from each other. We were all from different countries. All the friendships that I have made at the United Nations, a good majority of them I made when I was a tour guide. And many of those people I still know now, and that we support each other in the work that we do. In my experience in the UN, I had so many opportunities to do different types of work in the Department of Communications, Global Communications. So, in the UN works to do things like this, like to talk to people around the world and explain what the UN does. But why do we do this? I mean, of course, we want you to know what the UN is doing, but we want to inspire you into action. We want to, meet you where your passion is, and so that you can really activate that passion into activism. So taking something that you love and really, seriously learning about it and doing some type of action. Now, Jennifer mentioned that I've been to field operations. I don't know if you guys have heard of peacekeeping operations. I don't know if you've studied that first. This is a tool that the UN has to really help countries around the world and people around the world to keep peace. These are, kind of operations that are made up of soldiers from countries all around the world, but they also have people like me working. So, at maybe 25, I went to Cambodia, and I don't know if we had anybody from Cambodia. Give me a reaction. And I went there to work for the UN for the elections, because Cambodia was a country that had a lot of war, civil war within the country. And at some point, the UN was able to work with them and negotiate to have a ceasefire. And once they had that, they wanted to work towards having an elections to have a government in Cambodia. So for me, coming from Sierra Leone, imagine I had never been to Asia before, but I mean, I really loved it. I felt as if I was so welcomed by the people of Cambodia. And it was a new experience for me because as a tour guide, I talked a lot about peacekeeping operations on paper. But imagine me now at 25 in Cambodia. I mean, my eyes were wide open. I learned so much. I met so many people from across the UN system. I was working in the capital of Cambodia, Phnom Penh. And, I was working in the administration office for the elections. So I was able to see all the people coming in and out of all the different places of Cambodia. And my job was to help them with all the things that they needed in an administrative way to make their offices run well. Jennifer mentioned Somalia. From Cambodia, I went to Somalia, and I'm telling you, after talking about peacekeeping operations for such a long time, it was such a reality to see what was going on in Somalia. And I came back a different person, because I think sometimes when you sit at a desk and you're working, maybe sometimes when you're in school, you're doing all your work, you're taking all your tests, but I don't know if you guys do field visits. When you actually go somewhere and see what is happening, it just gives you such a different experience. And I tell you, I came back to New York, to the United States, with a completely different experience. And I understood what it meant to be the UN, not sitting at a desk, but in a country where there's so many needs, whether it's some of the things you're learning about for the SDGs, access to water, access to education, access to peace, access to, strong institutions. So as I said, I've always been fortunate where I have traveled all around the world without really buying a ticket because of the United Nations. Jennifer mentioned I was in Kenya, Bari, to all the Kenyans who are on the screen. I spent 10 years in Kenya working with young people and women in places that were less than perfect. So UN Habitat is the part of the UN that talks about shelter, housing, how do people get their water? Is that water clean? What happens when you're a woman in a community and your husband dies? I mean, do you lose your house? Do you lose your property? Those are the type of issues that I worked on. But for me, what was most really valuable is that I got to work with people face to face. I would go into a settlement in Kenya, in Nairobi, whether it was a place called Mathare or Kibera, which has the largest number of people living in like not so perfect living conditions. And I would work with young people. And I was so impressed in the type of energy, passion, and in the way that they wanted to be activists. But you know what the problem was, guys? A lot of them had not been able to go to school. A lot of them were living in extreme poverty. A lot of them were living in like houses made of aluminum surrounded by garbage. They had all these great ideas, but they had no access and no opportunities. So for me, working in UN Habitat in the youth program, one of the major things that we worked on is how do we lift these young people like you, older, younger, out of extreme poverty by giving them opportunities to raise their voice. A big part was helping them understand what the United Nations was, what the United Nations is doing to help their situation, but also mentoring them, helping them to understand how they could, activate the passion that they had within themselves, to be activists. And a lot of them were not students. They were just young people who had lost many years of education. So for me, that was the most touching part of my experience. Of course, now I'm working in New York in the civil society unit. I'm working a lot with young people. I'm working along with people who have organizations. I don't know if you guys know what non-governmental organizations are, or sometimes people call them NGOs. It's people like me and you who create organizations to work around a lot of the issues you're learning about in the SDGs. Maybe you might have an NGO talking about children's education, but it's important to talk about quality education, as the SDG says. Maybe you have an NGO talking about equality between men and women. It doesn't mean that women are going to take everything and men are not going to have anything, but how do we have a society where we have equality amongst all the people and all the different genders? So I love my job because it's doing stuff like this, talking to you. I've worked in the UN for about 34 years. Later on, maybe try to guess, how old do you think I am in the chat? And when do you think I started? Oh, I told you already when I started working in the UN. That's not fair. But I've been here 34 years and I wake up every day with a smile because I also have that passion and that activism in me. And I'm so excited to be here today to share this space with Juan, who is equally as passionate as you guys are, as I am. And I think I want to pass it on to Juan now. And I hope that when we get into the question and answer period, we can have a lot of more time to talk. And I'm really, willing and happy to answer your questions. So una thank you, yeah. I dey look for talk to una. So I dey pass on to Juan. Juan, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Hao, very much. And hello, everybody. Good afternoon from Madrid. I'm connecting from Spain right now, but I am actually from Colombia. And I'm just really happy to be able to share some of my thoughts with all of you. I see people from Greece, from Canada, from Italy, from Venezuela, from Argentina, from Thailand, from the UAE, from North Macedonia, Tunisia, Dominican Republic, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, Puerto Rico, Singapore, Turkey, so many places that I'm really, really happy to be able to share with you some of my thoughts on activism, on youth empowerment. And it's truly an honor to get to know you a little bit more today. And congratulations to the teachers and everyone involved in this great initiative. I'm really pleased to be part of this today. So I want to start with a question. I want you to answer this question on the chat box. If you are available to type the answer there, I want to see what you think of this and what are some of your thoughts. So my question is, what are you passionate about? What is your passion? So think about something you're really passionate about and write it on the chat box if you can. For example, in my case, I'm really passionate about climate action, environmental protection. I'm also passionate about young people, about working with young people. So maybe write down something on the chat box if you can on what are you passionate about. So I want to share with you a little bit of my experience as a young advocate, and it's very interesting how my journey started, because when I grew up, I wanted to be an engineer, and my parents always they were always very proud of me because they wanted me to see me as an engineer, especially in the oil and the gas, the petroleum industry. So I prepared myself during high school, middle school. I was doing very well in school with math and chemistry and stuff because I wanted to be a good engineer. But then when I graduated from high school and I went actually to study engineer, I realized that I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it much. And it was a little challenging for me because I prepared so much for that, for all these years in middle school and high school, that I was a little bit in conflict with myself. So I had the opportunity to travel to Argentina for the first time. It was my first country abroad, and then to Brazil. And I was a volunteer for NGOs over there, for foundations that were working to help children get education and get support and access to quality education, but also to basic resources. So I started traveling a little bit more, and then I went to Egypt, and then I went to Italy, and then I went back home to Colombia, and I realized that that the engineering was really not for me. That wasn't really something I really liked. So I started asking myself, what is my passion? What is my real passion? Why do I really like to do, and what do I really enjoy? So I'm seeing that people are talking a lot about global warming, book readings, exploring the world, reducing inequalities. It's so nice to hear all these comments on the chat box. So yes, please continue texting what are your passions, because I was really conflicted with myself, because I thought my passion was engineering and being in working with oil, petroleum engineering and all this stuff, but I realized it wasn't for me. So I asked myself, okay, so if I went to all these countries and I was part of these NGOs, why did I do it? And then I think I found the answer of why. And I think that for me, working with young people, for young people, was really my passion. And to be able to solve issues that my fellow young people were going through was really something that I wanted to do for many, many years, and maybe from the rest of my life. So that's how I decided to go to study in New York. And I changed my subject. I didn't study engineer anymore. And I started studying international studies and public policy. And because I was in New York, I had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the United Nations headquarters in New York. And I went to one of their events. And back then I was 21 years old. And I went to one of the events, and I was really surprised because I was really surprised because the UN actually has events for civil society, for people in general, for everybody. So I always thought that the UN was something really like far away from me, like I would just see on TV, or something that I was just that was really far away. But in reality, the UN is closer to you than you can imagine. So it's really something that is open for everybody. So I went to this event in the UN in New York, and I met so many interesting people. And I met someone who gave me the opportunity to join a program as a youth representative, and that was the United Nations Association of New York. And after that, I started to know that much more that the UN has different programs and platforms and campaigns and initiatives that you can be part of just as a regular student, just as a regular citizen. And that was something that I didn't really know. So I took advantage of that opportunity. And that's how my life really changed so much after that. And that was about 6 years ago now. So it's something that I wanted to share with you, because I think that a lot of us think that the United Nations is a program, is organization that is just not really close to the people, but because we just see it on TV, but in reality it's closer than you can expect it. So I'm starting to see that people are talking about animal protection, global education. I see other comments on people want to be YouTubers. They're passionate about public speaking. Okay, so now you got the first step of what activism really means. So I have different steps that I wanted to go through with you. So now that you have your passion, now that you think about that you're passionate about inequalities, reducing inequalities, that you're passionate about being social media influencer, that I talk about global education. So now that you have that, you have the first step of what activism means. So do you define your passion? So now the second question will be, you don't have to type it on the chat box, but you can think. So why are you passionate about this? Why are you passionate about global education? Maybe because in your you think that people around you should have better opportunities to education. But why are you passionate about the environment? Because you care about the protection of our planet. So think about why you decided to be passionate about this, and then think about how this benefits your community, your friends, your family, the people around you. So that's how that will be the second step of what student activism or activism in general is. If you're passionate about something, how does benefit my community? How does that benefit the people around me? So those are the basic steps of starting activism. But then the other step would be about looking for people that think similarly, people that are also passionate about the same issue as you. So maybe think that maybe people in your classroom, your classmates, maybe they're also passionate about climate change, or they're also passionate about education. So how do you get to talk to them and connect with them to maybe grow on something together? Do maybe a club talk, a group that you could discuss these kind of things, and how can this benefit the community? So that's the third step. Connecting with your friends and the people that think similarly as you. And then look into how all of you can do specific actions around you to start being an actual advocate and activist. So for example, I was very concerned that in my neighborhood, back in Colombia, we had really bad recycling system in my neighborhood. So I started looking for people in my neighborhood that really care about recycling. So we came together and we decided that that the trash that was dumped in our neighborhood, that was put out to be taken out, we wanted to do something with this recycling. So we contacted the mayor's office, and we did something to be able to deal with this trash problem with the recycling. So that's how you could get your first step into activism, is with the things that happen close to you. So if you think about inequalities, maybe think about things that are around your neighborhood or in your classrooms that you want to get involved in. So these are really basic steps, but this is really the basic foundation of student activism. So now that I see all these really great comments, and if you ask yourself about what you really like, I want you to try to really get these words into actual action. And that's how real activists it starts its journey. And I'm really pleased to see all of these comments and everyone's so engaged. And you know what, something I have realized during these 6 years that I've been involved with different programs with the UN and all these different youth engagement programs, is that young people have taken the leading role to fight for those issues that are going on in the world right now. And that is one of the basic examples, and the most visual example is definitely climate change. So you've seen Fridays for Future and all these young school students going out there and protesting, even on virtually or even out there. We're protesting because they want an environment that is for everybody, and they want an environment that is protected. So there are many different issues that us as young people, no matter how young we are, we could really make the change. And why did I started all this journey as a young activist is because I saw that people my age were going through different different difficulties that maybe I didn't experience, but I saw that my fellow young people did, and how could it contribute and help them to be to overcome it. And in the field of international affairs, you usually see a lot of older people, and because this is this kind of field of in diplomacy and traveling the world and going to places to talk about problems, there is a lot of older generations that take care of this. But now I've seen how important it is to have younger people in the decision-making process, talking, speaking out, making decisions, forming groups, and really, really fighting to overcome the challenges of the world. So it's a pleasure that I've been able to share some of my thoughts with you. And I see everyone so engaged, and all these young people, and you're never too young. You're never too young to do what you love. And I'm glad that I saw such big engagement, all of these hundreds of messages from all of you talking about your passions, but make that passion a reality. And that's how you start that activism. Thank you very much. Over to Hawa. I know she wants to say something.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Juan. That was really fantastic. Thanks for laying out those steps. And I think they're very practical. And I think for me, what I got out of your your interaction really is that we all have this passion within ourselves. And I think everybody around the screen, as Juan says, it's a matter of defining and getting hold of that passion that you turn into activism. And as I said, even for me, as somebody working at the UN, I've always had that passion, since I was younger, and I've carried that passion with me. And that's what really kind of helps me, to do the work that I do even now. So I think we're gonna maybe stop from here because we really want to give time to answer questions. I'll just mention everyone that I put in the chat a link to sign up for the announcement that my office does, the civil society unit, because as Juan says, we always tell people the UN is not this building you see on First Avenue somewhere in the headquarters in Kenya or Geneva. It's a place, and maybe because of the type of program you have, you've actually have the opportunity to walk through the doors of the UN. But once you get in there, you need to know that there are people just like you, like me, like Juan, like Elizabeth, my colleague, and that we're eager to talk to you. We're eager to hear from you, and we're eager to work with you. So I put a link in there that just gives you an example, from the angle of my office, some of the programs that happen at the UN, and many of them have to do with student issues that you're studying. A lot of them have to do with the SDGs. So please sign up and learn more about the UN and find out how to engage. Thank you much, Jennifer, for giving us this opportunity. We're going to pass it back over to you, and we're ready for your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing with us today. I think on behalf of Ayush and Kuhn and myself, we had before thought that the UN was this distant place that we didn't necessarily know where we fit in. But I think in the past several years, I think with help of the SDGs and people like you welcoming us in with open arms, that teachers have a place in the conversation, students have a place in this conversation, and that everyone's voices, opinions, passions, it's going to take us all to accomplish these goals and this work we need to do, particularly around climate. So that message really resonates with us, and we thank you for that. We have had some students sharing questions over the past week in preparation for today's session. We also have some questions in the chat box, and hopefully we'll be able to get to those. But Ayush, I'd love to turn it over to you. I know we had some questions from fifth graders. Maybe you could kick us off with that one.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to kick us off. So the first question that we got was from fifth graders at Ryan International School in Sharjah. And they had the question, what will happen after 2030? And will there be more global goals?
I think this is how, what will happen after 2030? I think that depends on all of us. There are several ways to answer this question, but let's take it from a people perspective. One thing that you guys must know by now is that the SDGs, it doesn't belong to the UN, it belongs to all of us. It was developed, through the UN, but through the voices of people like you. Many young people, had a voice in how the SDGs, look like today. And I think what the UN always tries to do and show is that, yes, they have to be, somehow put into action through governments, but we as individuals every day have a responsibility. The Department of Global Communications has an initiative called Act Now, which is focused on, SDG 13, 11, all of those ones that have to do with climate action, consumption and waste. And in that initiative, it's through an app. You should, really look for it. Maybe Juan can put the link on the chat. Everyday people taking everyday actions, like, make a difference. The idea is to have us change our behavior. I signed up for the climate action Act Now campaign. And one of the things that I signed up for, 2 of them. And, I have to be real. Because I work for the UN doesn't mean that I do everything in a perfect way. It's a struggle for me. I signed up to turn off the lights every time I leave a room. And then I signed up to have quicker showers. I love my hot water and I love my long showers. But every time I get into the shower, because I did sign up for Act Now, I kind of think about it. So these are everyday things. So I'm taking a responsibility in terms of what would 2030 look like. Governments have their responsibilities, but we have to push them. We have to hold them accountable, to do what is best for all of us. But we as individuals, and your generation, more than anybody else, is going to be living at that time. So you have, also a responsibilities of what it's going to look like. I can only tell you what I hope it's going to look like. That we're going to have, world of peace, of harmony, a world where people are working together, a world where we're not thinking about, climate change, poverty, hunger. These are just ideals that I have. But again, just to come back, that we have that power in our hands to decide how 2030 is going to happen. In terms of like the goals themselves, do you know that there's some people who've been trying to get additional goals? Many people felt as if there should have been an SDG on young people. So how do things happen in the world? Again, we as individuals, we elect our officials, we elect government. We have to hold them accountable, because you need to know that the United Nations is not a government organization, but it's made up of governments. Now, the governments who come there, the representatives who come there, they have been assigned or appointed by our presidents, our kings, whoever is running our country. So all of us within our own countries need to make sure our voices are heard, because that trickles down, in a sense, to who actually is representing your country at the UN. Over to you, Jennifer. I don't know if Juan has something to add on that.
Juan, would you like to go ahead?
Oh, just really quickly, I saw that some of you have put on the background as your background picture you an SDG, one of the goals. I've seen some of you also text on the chat book was your favorite SDG. Like one of my favorite ones is equality education. So it's everyone has a passion, and I think that even if we don't know much about the goals, we might be actually achieving those goals without even knowing, because we might be doing things in our homes, in our schools, that are contributing to achieving these goals. So it's really up to us as well to take on that leading role to achieve that goal around us. And I hope that at least by 2030 we don't need to have that many goals, because some of them we've achieved. So that's one of my hopes for 2030. But certainly that really depends on all of us coming together and the little steps that we can take to achieve them.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Hawa, for those responses. We have another question here, and I think related to what you just mentioned, Hawa, on this idea of another SDG 18, maybe, on youth and their involvement in achieving these goals, which I think we were all cheering in the chat box when you said that. So this is from students in Saad Zagul Official Language School. And their question to you today is, what is the United Nations doing to specifically help students?
Thank you, Jennifer. I think that I can say something quickly, but I think then also I'll pass to Juan, because, he's a beneficiary of the UN, because I can say a lot. And the question for me is always, how is that impacting people, in an everyday life? I mean, I work in a department, in an office. I keep saying it, global communications, because that's what we do. How do we get the message out to everybody, especially students? I think this interaction that we're having here is a prime example. I know that the Visitor Services section, Elizabeth's office, our education outreach office does a lot to things like, specific briefings for students. We have the Model UN, which I'm sure you guys have heard about, which is really just kind of putting students within the UN situation in terms of understanding what the UN is. And again, inspiring them around UN issues. So I mentioned 2 programs, but, when we say the United Nations, do you guys know there are over 40 organizations that make up the UN? In the background, I have the Dag Hammarskjöld Library, which is part of the UN in New York. But there are 4 or 5 other UN headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya, in Santiago, Chile, in Beirut, Lebanon, in Vienna, Austria, in Geneva. And then you have all kinds of offices in Addis Ababa, in Cambodia that I talked about. And then you have UN organizations. I know you guys have heard about UNICEF for sure, or maybe the World Bank. These are all different parts of the UN, and all of them have programs for young people. All of them, a good majority of them have resources for learning. I mean, at the college level, our department has something called UN Academic Impact. So, I mean, nobody here is in the college environment, but maybe for teachers, you might want to check out their website and take advantage of some of the resources that they have, because they're very heavy on SDGs, and like all the different universities who work with them have like a hub on SDGs. So, you might not be a university, but you can benefit from the information. And, even our own particular office, I mean, we have a program for young people. And, I try to think of young people not just as students, because, I know this is a student and a learning environment, but what we have come to understand is that learning and education is formal, as we are doing here through schools. It's also informal, because people, because of war, poverty, as we said before, sometimes don't have access. Or maybe because of the literacy, the level of education, sometimes it's in an informal way. And then also communications is learning. So the work that the Department of Global Communication does, we see as education. And these are all accessible to you. UN is hiding nothing. So for me, this is the major way that we help students to understand about the UN. We give them resources to participate in the UN. We have to understand that there's so many ways. I don't know if we have anybody more towards like the high school, but coming up is the Youth Forum of the Economic and Social Council, which is focused on young people. And it's one of the major platforms of the United Nations. And then in that platform, they're kind of collaborating or working with governments, with ministers, with presidents. And if you look at some of our websites, for example, UNICEF, maybe doing the SDGs, I hope that you've come across the world's largest lesson. My department, Global Communications, has so many resources for you as young people. But what I want to think is for myself, how do we help students? I hope that when I speak with you like this, as a UN person, as Hawa Diallo, really, that I am transferring that passion that I have about the UN to you, and that also I am actually listening to what you have to say about the UN and really making those connections for you in terms of resources to help you in the work and understanding of the UN. Over to you, Juan, because I think you're probably more better positioned, having interacted with the UN as a student and now as a professional. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Hawa. Well, so yeah, as I said in my intervention before, there are many ways that you could get involved with the United Nations and what can they do? What is the UN really doing for young people and for students? So there are several programs, platforms, initiatives that are led not only by the main UN headquarters or the UN Secretariat, but also led by other agencies. So for example, I will mention to you, there is something called Generation Unlimited. And this is a program run by UNICEF, which is for young people and children. And this Generation Unlimited, it's an initiative that basically gives and empowers young people to take action on different global issues. So as we talked about all of these issues in the chat box, Generation Unlimited also gives you the opportunity to join conversations, to join events like this, to also raise your voice, to talk about the things that you are passionate about. And that is just one way of getting involved in the UN. And that's a way that the UN is really supporting students across the world. There is also there is actually a dedicated office for young people, which is the Youth Envoy's office of the Secretary General of the United Nations. So you could basically very easily go to the website on Youth Envoy, a UN Youth Envoy. You could type it on Google. It will take you directly to the office that is dedicated to young people in the United Nations, and they actually list different resources or different ways that you could participate in events, in online conversations, that you could raise your voice to things that you really want to talk about. And there are many campaigns in social media, which we know that us, the young people, have really, which we are the ones that know the most about social media, and we know how to make noise on social media. So there are many campaigns and initiatives that the UN has created for us to use on our social media platforms. So just the SDGs is a very basic, simple step, but there's also other campaigns like what Havo mentioned on the Act Now. You could download a lot of material that you could post on social media about why it's important for me to take care of the environment. How can my fellow friends or colleagues could take on a leading role to save the environment. So just like these are many different resources that we could use, that the UN is supporting people. And you don't need to be an employer, you don't need to be a consultant of the United Nations to really get involved at that early stage. I remember when I started my journey, I was already in college in university, but I've met some people that were actually in middle school or high school that were also part of this programming. So it's open to a lot of young people that just really have, you know, the energy, the passion, the creativity, the innovation to be part of this. So you're never too young to participate and to get involved in this. So and another thing I think it's important is that we are very lucky that we are able to talk through these through the internet and through these platforms. But think for a minute that there are many of your friends that maybe don't have good internet service and that are not able to join these conversations. So do you think you have maybe a responsibility to share with them this information that you're receiving? So definitely think about how you could get this information to your friends, to your people around, the people around you that maybe don't have these services and they are not as lucky as we are right now to have the opportunity to talk, but maybe they need to have this kind of encouragement from your side to share this information with them. And that's also another part of really the spreading the message of the what the UN is doing, and also spreading the message of overcoming these global challenges.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much. The last question that we have is from grade 6 students at Oberoi International School and Vysoka Glowoska. Sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong. How can students increase the impact of their activism on SDGs and increase their reach to other schools and countries globally? And what advice do you have for young people to want to make the change in the community?
Wow, this is Howard. I think both Juan and I can take that, but you know, we've mentioned some of the ways, you know, already, but I think Juan touched on something just now, and that's really like a major kind of thing that the Department of Global Communication wants to do, especially my office where we work with you know, organizations from the different communities and schools, whether it's high school, colleges, is that we want you guys to act as information ambassadors, you know, like knowledge hubs, like, you know, whatever information or knowledge you get from here or in the goals project is something that you don't want to keep to yourself. You want to be able to share it with friends, with family, and you know, we want you to be like our, you know, goodwill ambassadors, sharing that information. So I think that's important, and that's a very kind of simple way to make change. And you know, sometimes you don't realize that when you talk to somebody, how much you impact, how much you can change the way that person is thinking. And sometimes it's even you talking to people that are older than you know, because you have a voice as a young person. It's not about your age or where you're from, but it's the power of the voice, and the power of your voice gets louder based on, you know, the accurate information that you have. So one thing that me, you know, as I said, I started as a tour guide, 21 years old. I was always proactive. Even though I had a job, I always searched on the UN information. At that time, there were no websites. When I started as a UN tour guide in 1986, no internet. But I was proactive, meaning I didn't sit around waiting for people to tell me something. I went out there. I was curious, you know, and then, you know, when I had that information, I told other people, because, you know, we have to be able to support one another, you know. And I think that helped me a lot. And I was flexible. And that's how I ended up in Cambodia and Somalia. You know, that I was curious and willing to find out what the UN is doing in other places. And in that way, to find out how I myself would fit into that change and into that action. So for me, those are, you know, two major things that I always think about. And it may sound silly, but I think be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Know that, you know, we are one humanity. We're all in this together, regardless of where we come from. I think I'll leave it to Juan to add some more things there, because I think there are many things in terms of how we can connect digitally, but also remember, it's not all about Twitter, Instagram, because I'm somebody who really values having been a tour guide. You walk around the UN face to face with people. So for many people, me and what I said was the first experience they would ever have about the UN. And I think that's something that all of us as tour guides worked very hard to do, to give that good feeling and that good experience about the UN with people. But don't get me wrong, I love social media, but I want us to know that we have to do it together with the way we interact with ourselves, as individuals in person. Over to you, Juan.
Thank you. Yes, I think regarding the question on what advice you have for young people who want to make a change in their community, I feel that it's really important that we never forget why we are doing what we are doing, and if we are passionate about something, if we're working towards something, we need to remember that connecting with one another, that working together, that making friends, that finding people that are also that want to work with things that are similarly to what we're trying to do is much more stronger. Definitely, when we are together, we're stronger. So I think it's connecting with other people, as I mentioned to you, to many young people that have maybe great ideas, but they don't have the access to resources. What can you do to contribute to that, or help each other to grow? And that's something I feel is really important. And I always say this is just having that empathy and connecting with one another, your fellow classmates. They might be thinking about something, an idea, but maybe they don't say it because they're shy. I think it's also important that we connect with them, and we also try to get those ideas to our teachers, because our teachers are really there to empower us, to guide us, to be mentors, to help us get that idea of us into reality. And I'm sure that all the teachers that are here listening to this conversation, and all the teachers that couldn't join, I know there are many hundreds, thousands of them that will definitely be there for you, to listen to you, to support you. So don't be shy. Share what you think. If you have an idea about something, share it with your teachers, because they are definitely those mentors that will help you support, and will also will empower you to go further with what you're passionate about. So that would be my advice.
Juan, I had one more thing to add, and I know that's something, a mantra. It's like a saying that we always have with the young people that I work with, is that never give up. And, don't be discouraged. Many times, it's part of life. You will get no as an answer, or you might feel as if you haven't done what you need to do. But always keep on going. Keep that passion lighted. So just keep encouraged. I wanted to thank all the teachers that are here, because a funny story about me is that when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I created a school in my mom's backyard, where I don't know how I came up with that idea. I would gather all the kids in the neighborhood, less privileged, and march them around my mom's compound, and I claimed that I'd be teaching them in my house. But when I think about it as an adult, the work that goes into being a teacher, the sacrifice and the time, I want to commend Jennifer and all the teachers, the learning resource people around the screen, for the fantastic work you're doing. And I really am humbled in the way that you have brought the UN into your classrooms in such a vivid, dynamic, and really practical way. So we bow down to you. We bow down to you, and thank you very much. Over to you.
Oh, we thank you for that message, and we welcome you into our community of educators, and thank you for the messages you've shared with all of our students and teachers today. Before we conclude, I want to encourage everyone to keep sharing those questions. As Hawa and Juan mentioned, they want to hear from you. And Hawa and Juan, how can students and teachers keep connected and sharing those questions after today's call?
I think definitely we'll be happy to really answer those questions. You can either email them to us. I don't know if you want to put, I can share my email with you, or do you want me to put it in the chat? Because I'm used to getting getting a lot of emails. I'm not always as fast, but I try my best to answer them. But maybe since we have so many interested people here, perhaps I can send them to you. Send you my email, and then I can put our general email in the chat. You can always, of course, get in contact with us through our social media handles. Juan, does that work for you? I think I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, that also worked. I'm a little bit more, let's say, informal in that way, because I love social media. So definitely, all of you, if you have other questions, you could ask me directly. Reach out to me on social media. I will leave my my Instagram for you to send your questions. I saw so many. I wish I could answer all of them. There's really good questions to everyone in the chat.
I know. Juan, you and I have some homework to do here. So
yeah,
I think we'll do our best to answer these questions and share them with you and your team, Jennifer, because I'm really touched in terms of really the interest and and just how keen everybody is about the UN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are definitely an informed group. They've been working very hard and have so much to share. I'd invite you both and everyone joining here today to join with us in 2 weeks on March 4th for our Day of Solutions. So we will be having students from all around the world sharing their ideas, their continued questions, their inventions, their presentations with us. So you can check that out. We'll be resending the registration for that. As we conclude, I would love, Juan had 4 steps for student activism, steps you can take. And I was thinking on his step number 3, which was find people to join with you in this movement forward. And if you scan through on all of the pages, you can see people who are all around the world who may look like you or may look different from you, maybe older, maybe younger, but you can see we have an inspired group of citizens ready to take action. And thank you all for sharing your passions and your ideas in the chat box. Ayush, I'd love to have you come back on too before we conclude, and then I'm going to unmute everyone. So if anyone wants to turn their sound on to say goodbye before we sign off. And Ayush, thank you for joining today, and we look forward to your week 5 message next week.
Bye, Miss. Goodbye, Miss.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
All-
you. This session
all for coordinating this.
Bye.
Bye, Miss.
Oh, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Mom.
Bye.
Good work, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for
Bye.
the
Have a inspiring session. Bye-bye.
Lovely session. Bye.
Here. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful session.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great.
We gained a lot of knowledge.
Oh, wonderful to hear. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And Hawa, Juan, and Elizabeth, we'll go ahead and sign off.
That's
Thank you for
it.
being with us today.
Thank you
Thank you so much for
Really, really
everything.
inspiring.
Thank you. Everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Jennifer. Goodbye.
Bye. We'll see you